Alright, we are back with Kerbal Derp program, episode 2, in which we will continue our quest for the stars, or, in this instance, the outer atmosphere. Now, I've decided that one of the things that I should change about the way I record this is if I have any sort of extended building phase where I'm designing something complicated, I'm not going to show that in its entirety. I might show a sped up montage, I might show, I might just skip it entirely, but I'm not going to show the whole thing. But this will only take a second. What we're going to do here, in order to beat that, or not beat, but fulfill that contract to get outside the atmosphere and move on with our space program, is we're going to essentially get ourselves a can of explosives, stick a control module on top of it, and just toss that up into space. I'm pretty sure this will work. Need some batteries real quick. We're not even gonna bother with science on this one. We're just gonna slap a parachute on there, and we'll set up. The last thing was we'll set up a decoupler so we can separate these on the way down. All right. Get our staging sequence correct. The can of boom. Build that puppy. So yeah, I'm gonna skip the construction phases in the future just because it's kind of boring, and we want to focus on the things that are interesting. All right, roll out the can of boom. Now, while we're getting ready to launch this thing, one of the things I forgot to mention are the basic mechanics of career mode, which is the mode of Kerbal Space Program I'm playing. There's also a sandbox mode where you have unlimited resources, and a science mode. But here in career mode, the chief factor is that we have money, and our craft costs money to construct, and the contracts pay money when we complete them. For instance, this orbit Kerbin contract will pay an advance and a completion, which I think I showed already. But the idea is you have a finite amount of money, and that's the distinguishing characteristic. You also have reputation. You get more reputation by completing contracts. You lose reputation by failing them or killing your spacemen. And the higher your reputation is on a slider from 0 to 100, the better contracts will be offered to you. And then lastly, we have science, which is unlocked by some contracts and by doing research in the field, and is used to unlock new technologies. Alright, so let's launch this can of boom. I legitimately don't know what could possibly go wrong with this, but that doesn't mean nothing will. Now, the plan here is to go straight up. We're not angling, at least intentional, at all. Oh my. Oh my. Well, Kerbal Derp program, alright. This is not what I intended. The problem here is that I don't have any, you may have seen at the beginning it said I don't have any SAS modules. That means I don't have any stability assist modules. And I also didn't add any fins to this. So, yeah, I'm just gonna have to wait for this thing to crash and then give it another shot. I should have put fins on it. Oh, actually, it doesn't necessarily have to crash. We can use that parachute, or maybe it's gonna crash anyway. Well, back to the drawing board. So we're going to try that again. We're going to give it a different parachute and some actual fins so that hopefully we can get that. We recover the one component, the little decoupler.
Remember when I said I couldn't imagine any way that could have possibly gone wrong? Yeah. You know, I used to be under the impression that I was actually pretty good at this game. I think that has been well documented as not the case. Golly, that's ugly. But we clearly need a bigger parachute in order to slow us down at the end there. Add some fins to keep the back end in the back. Rinse and repeat. I should really probably be using simulations, but simulations are boring because then you see the whole thing and then it's almost as if you have to do it twice. Because you see it, and if it succeeds, then we actually build it and do it again. Which for such trivial missions, I just don't feel like doing. Maybe I should, but I don't. Alright. We're going to wait for morning. And give it another shot.
We're gonna get out of the atmosphere. We have to get out of the atmosphere. I confess I've had more trouble with getting the just initial basics. You know, getting out of the atmosphere, getting something that will fly in a stable manner than I have ever had with any playthrough of Kerbal Space Program. Naturally. It would happen when I'm recording it, that everything goes wrong. Nice sunrise though. Alright, we're doing 600, 700. We can see our apoapsis height here. It's rapidly going up, just broke 70k. Hopefully our parachute won't catch on fire. Our parachute caught on fire. Well, I guess we won't be landing this, but on the plus side, I do believe we're going to make it all the way out. Now, the reason our parachute exploded was when you're traveling very quickly through the atmosphere, your craft is running into air molecules, and obviously the air is not moving. And when the air impacts the surface of your rocket, it is heated by all that kinetic energy that dissipates with the impact. And so if you get too much of that, you end up overheating your rocket and destroying components. So we are well and truly into space. 70,000 meters is the limit of the atmosphere in Kerbal Space Program. It's an exponential drop off, and then at 70,000 it completely disappears. And so we've completed that goal, regardless of the fact that we will not be recovering this. That's okay. It's not like the Nazis recovered the V2s they launched or anything. You know, this is a standard first step is you you blow it up. All right, so we're just gonna drop this back down, and hopefully we'll get a science bonus. We should, for completing a vessel outside the atmosphere, and then what I'm going to do, and I won't show all of this, but I'm going to go ahead and use all of our... Whoa. I'm going to go ahead and use all of our science and try and unlock some new technologies, and maybe we can actually get our manned, or should I say Kerbaled space program underway. Because so far it's all been unmanned probes. Coming down, impacting the lovely city texture here. And shaboom. Okay. Well, that was, once again, it says the outcome was a catastrophic failure. I'm not convinced of that. It was a partial failure. Alright. Time to unlock that sweet, sweet technology. Alright, we have researched 2 new technology nodes, and what that gives us is some better fuel tanks, some better engines, a lot of better engines actually. We have this inline RCS block, which allows us, RCS is a reaction control system. It allows us to use little thrusters to control the way that our rockets are pointing. We got some new structural components, and let's see, I think we may have unlocked, yeah, we unlocked some new science experiments and parachutes. Alright. So I think it is high time that we put something into actual orbit. So I'm going to go ahead and design something that hopefully is capable of that. And then I will get back to you and explain how it works. Alright, so right here we've got the Orbiter Mark 1, that's what I'm calling it. What this is we've got this Probodone probe core, that's the control system right here, it's right in the middle. And attached to that we've got a number of parts. We've got a bunch of batteries, we've got these two mystery goo containment units, these are science experiments that we'll use up in orbit, and then we've got 4 other of these small science experiments attached, and a parachute. Now, we've got these weird wings on it, and the idea behind these is when we're coming back down through the atmosphere, I want to make sure that this end is pointing up. I want the parachute on top. I don't want it to go parachute first. And so these, having these fins trailing through the top, should prevent it from going backwards through the atmosphere. Okay? Then we have a stack separator, and then we've got 2 stages below that, both of which are liquid fueled. And so this first stage here is designed to lift us up out of the low atmosphere, and then this stage is designed to push us into orbit. Whether or not that'll work, you know, that's part of the adventure. So we're going to go over to the contract center and see what contracts are available that maybe we can accomplish with this rocket. The most obvious one is, there should be one. Yes, we have one for orbiting Kerbal, and that'll probably pay for the cost of that rocket. That's 37K about. It'll also give us a little bit of science, some rep, 22 rep. We've also got a contract here for testing a Vesta VR1, okay? That's the engine that we were already using in our second stage. And the parameters here are you have to be between this certain altitude and this certain speed. I think we can do that. We may not pull this off, but if we do, it's some extra money. If we don't, we've still accomplished something in just getting the thing off the ground. Alright, so we stand to make up to about 50,000 credits if we can accomplish both of these objectives, and the cost of the rocket is, let's see here, rocket only cost 8,000. So I intentionally I used the cheapest engine available on the bottom here. I used the Dutch Hound, and this engine has actually a unique property. It has the highest thrust to weight ratio of any of the engines in its class that I have available right now. What that means is, relative to the amount of thrust the engine makes, the engine weighs very little. It's not actually that efficient. That is, it doesn't burn fuel very efficiently, but it just doesn't weigh very much. To offset this, the engine will overheat and burn up rather easily. And so I'm going to have to watch that, but it's also very inexpensive. It costs about half as much as the alternatives, which is part of the reason that our rocket cost is so low at only 8,300. So we're going to build this. This vessel did not pass editor checks. Did I forget something obvious? Part count limit is exceeded. Oh, this is a problem. Our current vehicle assembly building can only support crafts with up to 30 parts, and I've got 31 here. Okay, I'm gonna have to find a part that I can trim out somewhere. I don't have enough money to upgrade this vehicle assembly building right now, so I think we can still make orbit without that. That's a little bit of extra fuel, but we'll be okay without it. Alright, so now we're at exactly the part limit, and we're only at half of the mass limit of our current facilities. Okay. Alright, we're going to build that. Now, something you've got to understand when you're trying to get into orbit as opposed to just trying to get out of the atmosphere is that, oh, I have two of these. Oh, that was a mistake. That's a bug. Anyway, is that getting into orbit is every bit as much about going fast sideways as it is going fast up. Actually, it's much more about that. So what we have to do with our rockets is design something that is capable of both lifting our rocket up to 70,000 meters, but also capable of getting it going sideways at about 2,300 meters per second once we're up there. XKCD has a great what if that's about this property of orbital launches. And so we need, once we get up there, it's not enough to just get up there. We have to use our second engine once we're up there to try and go sideways really fast. So time will tell if this system proves capable of that. But we're gonna give it a shot. All right, 3, 2, 1, and lift off. All right, I'm gonna have to watch the throttle on this engine because it can overheat, like I mentioned. Also, other than the fins, we have almost no control. The fins are gonna keep us pointed in the same general direction, but I can't steer really. Now you'll note that we're tipped a little bit to the side here. That's intentional. I tipped us just slightly right as we began because, like I said, we have to go sideways. And so the sooner we start going sideways, the more efficient this is going to be. Alright. Now, that contract for the Vesta is for... Oh, I forgot my second stage needed some fins. Ah, we're out of control here. This is not good. I'm glad that this is not a manned mission because our Kerbals would be in trouble. We may still be able to salvage this though. Because the Vesta here is gimbaled, once it is running, it gives us some control over which direction we're going in. So while we didn't meet the parameters for testing that Vesta because we were out of control at the time where I would have tested it, but we may actually make orbit with this. We'll see. Let's see, our apoapsis is already at 114,000 meters. Okay. So what we need to do now is we need to wait until we reach that apex and then burn sideways so that we accelerate, because we're going high enough now, but we aren't going fast enough sideways. So we're gonna skip through time a little bit. Alright, we got 30 seconds to our peak altitude, and it's time to use that engine. Alright, we need to hit about 2,300 meters a second. Right now we're doing 1,300. We can go ahead and run some experiments while we're up here. This is a mystery goo materials experiment to see what this stuff does in space. The goo seems to have clumped into a sphere. It also appears to have become brittle. Okay. Now let's take a look at our current trajectory. We're just barely clipping... Oh, we're not even clipping the planet on the other side. 54,000. So if we speed up a little bit more over on this side, that'll make that side go a little bit higher. releasing the throttle, and we're in orbit. Ta-da! Contract complete. Orbit Kerbal. We didn't tell the recovery team that you'd be staying in space, so they're still looking. Great job. Alright. We also got some additional funds in science and reputation for breaking some world records. Land distance records, and the first to reach orbit. So our company, Kerbal Derp program, is doing very well financially right now. Think SpaceX on steroids. Our income vastly exceeds our expenses, despite the fact that I turned the difficulty way up. Unfortunately, I think that will change. I think that'll get worse once we're trying to... lunar missions and such are much more expensive. Alright, so we've got some experiments, aeronautical data. The aeronautical instruments are confused and disoriented. Where'd the atmosphere go? Apparently I'm getting science points for it anyway, though. After carefully going over the data, the Kerbal Space Center Engineering Department asks for the budget to build a vacuum chamber. And lastly, at this altitude, we can test material reactions to re-entry heat and vacuum condition. That's the same message you gave me last time, game. Alright. So, now that we are in orbit, essentially what we're doing is we're traveling sideways so fast that for every meter we fall down, the planet curves away from us 1 meter, and so we're in this sort of equilibrium. And we'll stay up here perpetually, since there's no air resistance up here, unless I do something. And I am going to do something. I'm going to try and bring this down as close to... Let's see, where is Kerbal Space Center? It's on the little African... Kerbal Space Center is about there. So, in order to recover this vessel most effectively, we want to land somewhere on that continent, at least. It can be kind of hard to hit what you're shooting at. But the way that we come down is if we slow down here, it will drop our low point down lower. And if our low point is inside the atmosphere, then when we get to it, we'll start experiencing air resistance, we'll slow down, we'll fall out of orbit. What these are called is the apoapsis is the high point of an orbit, and the periapsis is the low point of the orbit. I apologize if I mispronounce that in the future. But so we need to lower our periapsis below 70,000 meters in order to come back down out of orbit. And I'm going to wait until I'm on the far side of the planet to do that, so that when we fall, we'll fall down around the Kerbal Space Center. Alright, make sure we have plenty of electricity to run the probe. I added an excessive amount of batteries because you cannot imagine how frustrating it is to put a probe up in space and then have it die, and you can't control it and it's just stuck there perpetually. Alright, so we are orbiting the planet, and probably that's about good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn so that we're facing away from the direction of travel, which we're almost doing already. I don't know if you can see, it's pretty dark. And now we're going to essentially use our rocket engine to slow ourselves down a little. Now as we do this, you can see there's the low point of our orbit. It's changing. We're over here. Here's our low point. And it's dropping to 30, 20. Alright, so 7... Right now, assuming there was no air resistance, and there will be air resistance, you can't really see these because they're not colored. They're colored later in the game, but our low point is in the ocean to the east of the Kerbal Space Center, and it's predicting about 7,000. I think I've actually overdone it a little bit. When you factor in air resistance, I think we'll fall down to the surface about there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn the ship around and speed us up a little bit again. In order to raise that, because I think that's a little overkill. Alright. Let's just need to barely tap the throttle. Another thing you've got to understand is that once you're in orbit, you can change where you'll end up a lot by just barely using fuel. Um, that is, if I make a small change over here, in an hour or so when I'm over here, it'll end up being a big change. Alright, so 16,000. I'm going to call that good enough. Alright. Now, I've got some fuel left in this tank. However, that's not very useful because it's not enough to really slow me down, and assuming that I don't actually burn up from heat effects on re-entry, I'm going to slow down to whatever my terminal velocity is due to air resistance. So I'm doing 2,000 something meters a second now, but I will slow down to a couple hundred meters a second shortly before I hit the ground just because the air is so thick. So I don't really need this engine very much. Though until we get to that point, what it's actually doing is also helping me slow down. So there's kind of a balance between when I dump it and how useful it is. Well, there went that mystery goo. Forget about that experiment. Apparently it can't take the heat. I'm a little concerned about Valentina here. I don't know how hot the pod is going to get. It doesn't have a dedicated heat shield. I would be very upset if she died on the first mission. Looks like we're exiting the danger zone as far as heat is concerned. Alright, okay. Well, looks like we're not going to make any money on this mission, but I don't think anybody's going to die. So that's always a plus. You know, in the original version of Kerbal Space Program, if one of your Kerbals died, they would just respawn, so it didn't really matter. But I gotta say, it's really frustrating when your people die. One time I had a mission to another planet that took me, golly, I don't know how long, maybe I probably sunk like 15 hours into the planning and execution, and in the end it all just went horribly wrong and everybody died, and I didn't play Kerbal Space Program for like several months after that. It was so demoralizing. I mentioned in the first episode that this is a less hardcore reality, more geeky, or less geeky version than a lot of space simulators, but it can still be pretty brutal. Well, Valentina, your ship proved incapable of the task at hand, but yeah, she's alive. And she's the first Kerbal in space. She gets a bunch of awards for that. Operational Service Ribbon for completing a single mission as a pilot. First landing on Kerbin. And first Kerbal in space. Congratulations, Valentina.